So where are you from here originally?
Um, so originally I'm from New Jersey, and then my family moved to the Trumansburg, New York, like right outside of Ithaca, New York, and then we moved around the Buffalo area like, when I was around like in fifth grade, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I love Ithaca's gorgeous, as they
Mhm.
say. It's super corny. Do you ever go with Trumansburg? There's this big state park there. Everybody goes swimming. Is that what that is?
I'm not sure. I don't think so in Trumansburg, but like Ithaca in general is they have a lot of like gorges and stuff. So everyone says like Ithaca is gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I grew up like walking along the creek bed, like up to the waterfalls, like Taganic Falls, and like swimming in Cayuga Lakes. So that's definitely like a big part of my life.
It's awesome. Yeah, I grew up in Syracuse area, but I
Mm-hmm.
never like. I mean, I would go to Ithaca, but I don't really remember
Mm-hmm.
things like that. I got you. So, were you doing your art way back when, or like when did that start for you?
I've kind of been doing it my whole life because both of my parents are architects, so they themselves are very like crafty people and artsy people. So they've always been encouraging, luckily, in my life with that, and I've been very grateful like for that. Like my mom always wants everything I make, and I feel bad telling her no, and so they've been very supportive with that, and like I've just been doing it forever.
So they're both architects. And
Yeah,
you originally were going to school for architecture, right?
yeah.
So what made you go off your? I know you had already kind of said that you were happier, which is the most
Mm-hmm.
important thing. But I mean, obviously, you must be good at architecture too, right? Is it in your blood?
I kind of like grew up like since a very young age, like looking at AutoCAD and like architectural drawings. And then in high school, I took a 2 year program with Ormsby. It's an extension of Erie Community College. And it's a more of a vocational school. So for half the day, for 2 years, I would go across the street to another school and I'd learn AutoCAD, 3D modeling, 3D printing, some animation. We'd reverse engineer stuff a lot. And it was a really fun class. And then that kind of made me want to go into architecture. And then I was like, I can do architecture, but art makes me happier.
I got you. Yeah. So how was that telling mom and dad that we're gonna do art and not architecture?
Um, my mom, fully supportive, just wants me to be happy. My dad, I think he was a little thrown off at first, but then once he's like seen what I'm making now and everything, like, he's always been supportive, but now he's like very much more encouraging about it.
It's understandable. I think it's probably common too when both your parents have a similar profession or the same profession,
Mhm.
right? It's like having both parents in the medical field, and then they're like, "Why aren't you a doctor?" Right?
Yeah.
I got you. Um,
And
so
I still like use some of the things like from architecture and all of that in my work now. And like last semester, I had to make a cutting board, so I used like these really cool like molding details from that you'd use in like cabinetry and stuff, and I put that as part of my cutting board. So it's combining multiple aspects.
that was literally my next thing. I was gonna say, do you feel like you're getting like you're better at certain things because of like the architecture stuff?
I think it definitely helps like building things. Like I'm able to build some things more technically. Like I was able to like use AutoCAD to make plans for a laser cutter to make a clear TV out of acrylic sheets. And I had like moving dials, like a whole remote that had moving parts to it, and it was a really cool project to me.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a good point. It helps you probably with like sculpture too, right? With,
Yeah.
like when you're, or even envisioning art with your
Mhm.
paintings or something. You know, I don't know. Is that something that you feel? There's a random ass fly. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. It's like,
Fuck you, fly! You're ruining my show.
um, I think it definitely inspires certain things. Like for paintings, like I like to include architectural details like columns and things because that's been a big part of my family's history. And I think also just ceramic wise, I like to incorporate a lot of other materials to make it more challenging. Like I like building fountains, like working fountains with water pumps and everything. So like one of the first final projects I ever made was a fountain that's probably like this tall and it had a working water pump. And then I try to make one like every year now, sometimes maybe twice a year. So it's really fun.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible to think about that you can take something and you do that kind of art. Do you ever try to, if you don't, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but you ever try like incorporate like a reuse or like some type of environmental art or something like that? You ever...
Yeah, I definitely like to not let anything go to waste, because in ceramics you can mess up at any stage. So you really have to be okay with like letting go of what you made at any point, despite maybe putting 40 hours into it already or something like that. So you definitely have to be like mentally strong with that. And so I've found like in keeping the vases that I might have messed up to some other people's standards with ceramics, mine allow flowers to sit more naturally, kind of like how they would outside. And because of that, I kind of encourage that when I'm throwing now. So I'll purposely make a fold or make it tear a certain way.
The perfection of imperfection, right?
Yeah, and I that's kind of goes with like the ideals of wabi sabi, which is like appreciating the beauty of deterioration as part of nature's beauty, also not just perfection.
Yeah, it's we should go back for a minute for anybody watching who probably doesn't know who the hell you are. You're known, at least in my view, you're known for pottery, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I do kind of a bit of everything, but more so recently I've been doing more ceramics and pottery because that's my major at Upstate. And
right. What would you? So is all of the things that I'm seeing you make, are they being made at Buff State currently? Do you have your own like thing at home maybe or something? I was curious about how that works.
So I have to use Buff State's equipment, unfortunately, because ceramic equipment is very expensive. Like a pottery wheel alone is like $2,000 or more. And then a kiln is even more expensive than that. And then the cost of running it, the cost of the clay, the glazes, everything that goes into it, other than just the time that's spent doing it. So luckily I am able to use Buff State's campus, and my professors are amazing and like let us make things that are crazy big, and just they'll help us move them. They're very, very dedicated to helping us, and it's wonderful. But even over the summer, we had a few opportunities like to throw at the Allentown Art Festival this summer, me and my friend Anne Marie, and they allowed us to borrow wheels from Buff State to be able to do that. So we're very grateful for that.
Wow. Yeah, and that's, I think I've seen the footage when you were on the news or the newspaper or whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys were out there doing the pottery right in the street or wherever. That's
Yeah.
great. It's crazy. So is that, because you said you do everything. I know we'll talk a little bit more about some other stuff you do.
Mm-hmm.
But is that like, I mean, how do you see yourself as an artist like that? You know what I mean? Like, what is your focus?
I think it just depends on the day.
Okay.
When I was taking a break from going to Kent to being at Buff State, I would kind of just wake up every day and be like, what do I want to do today? And if I didn't know how to do it, then I would teach myself how to do that thing. So I kind of like, just through having a bit of time to myself, which I was very lucky to have, that now I don't have any free time, but I was able to explore more areas of art and more ways to incorporate different materials and methods.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's one of the things with our studio here, we are art purchasers. I don't have everything up, but I have some art pieces up, and watching those local artists and their process and whatnot, it's kind of amazing how one day it'll be just regular painting, and the next day, you know, they're grabbing like just random materials to make this totally crazy thing. Mm-hmm. It's kind of shocking. So there is no putting you in a box. You're not a painter. You're not a, I almost called you a potterer. I don't know what the hell you
a ceramicist.
Yeah, there you go. My bad. Like, you're just all of it.
Yeah.
That's cool. What is Lucky Ducky Company?
So that's the name of my business. I decided to name it Lucky Ducky Company because I felt like I was just a very lucky person, and I wanted to share that with other people and make them feel lucky and share what I've felt lucky enough to make.
Okay. And that's something that you're doing while you're going to school?
Yeah.
How does that work, like, with your business?
So luckily, going to Buff State and being able to use their studios, where we have projects that we're required to make throughout the semester, but we're also allowed to make extra things throughout the semester. So that's really helpful because there's events and things that I can do to sell my work and present my work, like how we were able to demonstrate just how throwing works and everything at the Allentown Festival. And then I was off able to go to Bika recently to be a vendor and also demonstrate the pottery wheel there. So that was really nice.
Where did you go?
The Bika school, the
Okay.
BICA school.
Okay.
They had an event recently, and so that was really fun to
Where's
throw
that?
it. I can't remember the street now.
It's local, though.
Yes, it's in Buffalo.
Big opportunity for you, it sounds like, or
Yeah.
just something new. That's cool. So when you make something that's on the street, that's a good point to go back to real quick. When you're making something at like one of these festivals,
Mm-hmm.
how are you getting it to the kiln without something bad happening?
Very carefully. We load up the car and drive as carefully as we can, and either bring it home to dry out and then transport it to the studio, or just bring it right to the studio and it will sit in a kiln for a while to dry out, and then we fire them.
Okay, so same, not to like minimize it, but I'm saying like when I was younger, right, and you were in art class and they had a kiln somewhere that the teacher would go fire. It's a similar thing we're talking about process-wise, but you've got to get it back there.
Yeah, and we usually, during the summer, our professors have been nice enough to load the kiln for us because we can't always be there, because
Sure.
it's kind of their time to have a studio, because during the semester they're helping us so much and they're busy. So it's kind of their opportunity to make their own work, and they make amazing work. But when we're there, we have to load our own kilns, so we have to know like the firing temperatures, the process for it, if our pieces are dry enough, like what's safe to put in the kiln, all of those procedures.
Yeah, pieces blow up. Is that a thing?
It can happen. I've only had one small thing blow up, but it didn't damage anything else in the kiln, and yeah, it's probably my own fault.
I don't know if you can, I'm kind of ignorant with this. Can you explain to me what that even is, or you don't know? Like, what makes something blow up?
So what makes something blow up is usually when it's still wet. So if something is still wet, it's not that the moisture in it will boil and then it'll cause it to expand, and then that's what causes it to explode. Also, if you have air trapped in it and it hasn't dried out enough, that can also cause it to expand and explode. So if you have something hollow, you want to poke a hole in it so it has some way to have air escape. And there's a lot of ways to prevent it.
There's ways to prevent it?
Yeah.
Do you ever have to do pieces in layers where, like, is a piece ever going back into the kiln multiple times?
Yeah, you can fire a piece pretty much as many times as you need to, but it's a matter of how you have to attach things to each other. Because like even just attaching, like if I had two pieces of clay and just slapped them together, they're not necessarily going to stick together. You have to it's called scoring and slipping. So you make scratches in it, and then you combine some of the clay with water to make it's called slip, but it's like a watery paste that you put on, and then you squish them together, and then that's what secures them, kind of like gluing them together.
But that has to be done, I'm assuming, while they're both raw pieces?
Yeah, well, it's both wet clay. And then
like you can't fire wet clay onto a layer of dry clay. Right?
No, it won't stick.
Okay,
yeah.
That's what I just figured you were going to say.
Yeah, so if you load a kiln, you can stack plates together and they won't stick to each other, and then when they're done firing, you can take them out and they'll be done. But that's only for bisquing. If you're glazing, then it's glass melting all over it, and it'll stick.
What's glazing? Is that like the final product?
Yeah, so that's like the colorful glass shine you see on dishes when they're finished. So that's mostly silica based, and you can also have different kinds. Not all of them are food safe. There's different temperatures that fire at higher and lower temperatures, and it just depends on the effect you're going for,
Okay.
and also if you need it to be watertight or not.
Yeah, like non-permeable or something.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's for the food safe.
Yeah.
types.
Yeah, typically we call it cone 6, but that's the temperature usually that's food safe.
Do you have a certain type of sculpture or ceramics that you like to do over the other?
I definitely like hand building. I think it's very it takes a lot of time. It's very tedious, especially the things I make. I made a raccoon and I had to make all the fur texture, and I think it took me about a week.
Oh, I gotta see this. Do you have a picture or something?
Yeah.
No, you have to show me.
And it was very satisfying when it was done, but it takes a lot of commitment, and clay is very tricky. It has to stay moist when you're working on it, so it involves a lot of spray bottles and sponges and plastic bags and just anything you can try to do to keep it moist. And then other times you're trying to get it dry with fans and bed sheets and all this other stuff. So it's a very delicate process sometimes.
That's, wow. I never really think about what goes into it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you make do you feel like you're making, like this is what my original question was more asking, but I like where you went with it. Like, do you make functional pieces? Do you make like sculptures? Do you make both?
I make both. It depends on what my needs are for what my end project will be. Sometimes, like my last project, I made a bunch of like functional pieces, like vases and things. But usually I like more sculptural things that don't have a real function, and they're more so just meant to be looked at or thought about.
Yeah. Because I did see some of your functional pieces you had posted on Instagram that had like the writing on the side.
Yeah.
And they were awesome.
Thank you.
But I've seen some of the other ones too, and I was curious to what that, because as a photographer, I tell people all the time, like, I can put you in front of a wall and take your picture, but I like to do like lifestyle photography. I want to catch you in the moment. I want to catch a smile on somebody that's like a stranger. Look at this fucking smile, it's amazing. So I was curious, what is that passion for you with the sculpture, and the ceramics?
I think it's just finding interesting ways to build. Like I like including a lot of materials like wire and like water pumps to make the fountains actually work in water. And like I also like to include lights a lot in my work because I like the life it brings to a piece, and it really just depends on what the end goal is.
I gotcha. This goes back to the architecture thing where you feel like you can envision things really well.
Yeah. And then our professors also give us like prompts for projects. So they're very good at like challenging us and being like, maybe you should think about it this way or something like that.
It's interesting. When you said that earlier, I never think about that. I actually know, shout out to Erin Habes, the head of fashion over there. But like, I never think about the fact that the professors are themselves artists or a part of whatever they're teaching, right?
Yeah, our professors are very talented. They've both been at the Birchfield Penny, and some of them are still selling work there right now. My professor, Colleen Toledano, she has a show coming up. And she also had one of her pieces. It was an amazing, very delicate piece with a bunch of strawberries and leaves all made out of porcelain. And she had that featured at NCECA, the National Ceramics Convention that they have every year. So we got to see that when we went to Cincinnati, Ohio. And it was really cool to see such an amazing piece with all these other amazing ceramicists.
Wow. Yeah, and especially this is somebody, right, that you're learning from, you're getting to be around. So that's got to be such a feeling, huh?
Yeah, it's interesting seeing her like in the back room building it, and we see all these little leaves left everywhere, and we're like, oh, Colleen was here. And then we go to the gallery and it's lit up all theatrically, and it's in a case so that it doesn't get harmed or anything. It's very delicate, and it's really cool.
Yeah, that's got to be very cool. And then it also probably inspiring for you to want to be that person someday. Maybe not the teacher, but I don't know. Maybe.
No, yeah, definitely. Me and my friends have definitely talked about like pursuing a master's so that we could also become ceramics professors, because we love teaching people, but we also love the art aspect of it.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
One thing I want to just touch on, because we talked about it a bit, is you're a painter, but you're not known for that, or at least you don't advertise it. I don't know what you said. How you said that. What's the deal with the painting?
When I did switch to art at first, my major was supposed to be painting, and then I didn't really like how that was at Buff State. It just wasn't for me. So I decided I don't really need a degree in painting to do painting. And so I just kind of have taught myself painting over the years for the most part, and occasionally do a mural, but that's about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're going to get commissioned for painting, do you prefer to paint like a piece that someone's going to buy, or do you prefer to get a mural? Or
I think a mural is pretty fun because it's not often you get to paint something so large, and especially something that's on a wall. I think that makes it really fun. And then a regular piece, like that's kind of just me in my room or something, or me at my house, like experimenting with things, or like just making it for myself, really, not really to sell it.
Sure. I'll I'll say shout out to the stick figure guy. If it is a guy, nobody really knows who they are. But the stick figure person is around us sometimes. And we talk about this all the time about the parallel of street art and these murals and like graffiti and like the level of it. So I ask everybody this. This is not a you question. Is graffiti, like, I know it's street art, but like is it art? Is it vandalism? Like, what's the line? What's your take?
I definitely would consider it art, especially because there's a lot, I think, that goes into it. Like, it's not just someone going out there and spraying a word. Like, these are like very hard to do fonts. Like, they go crazy. There's layers to them. There's a whole process to them that I think people don't really realize. And I think it's, especially around Buffalo, we have a lot of really talented graffiti artists. And even recently, there's been discussion in other states of, is it to like say graffiti is vandalism and press charges is almost saying like taking away someone's free speech. So in other places, the laws regarding graffiti have changed and you can't really get in trouble for doing graffiti.
You hear that, Buffalo? In other places, you can't get in trouble, or not the same trouble.
Yeah.
Like, let's just take a note for a minute, because I'd say you can't drive anywhere in the city without seeing a backpack or a stick figure guy with a heart. I was telling you before we came on, when we were recently in Atlanta, shout out to Space Out Podcast, and I was just blown away by their art. And the way they did it, I talked to a lot of graffiti artists, was it's sections of the city. You know where you can tag and where you would get in trouble if you didn't tag.
Yeah, I feel like there's whole unspoken rules to it that they know that just other people don't know about, and it's really its own culture more than people realize. Yeah,
it's something special too, but I just like to bring it up every time because it's interesting how, like, online here in Western New York, you'll see the range of people like, oh, it's vandalism to whatever. So I always ask, like, what's your take?
And I have a minor in museum studies. So when I was working on that minor, we actually did an exhibition with the Birchfield Penny where we would pick 2 pieces from their collection that they hadn't displayed yet and write like the museum labels for them, hang them up, everything in the Birchfield Penny. And one of the pieces I picked was by Ian De Beer, and he's a wonderful artist, but it was a spray painted piece, and it was supposed to be mimicking Roy Lichtenstein's comic book pieces, and it was just meant to like amplify, like, it was a woman crying, and it was supposed to amplify like how silly these tropes were and everything. And I think that just even shows in itself that like graffiti artists aren't just going out there writing on a brick wall; they're also like actual artists, like using canvases, doing other things too.
Yeah, it's funny. I try not. My wife gets so mad at me. Like, I try not to be that guy, like, yelling at people online, because nobody cares about your opinion online. But like when this topic specifically comes up, I literally am trying to tell people, like, these are people will say, like, you need to, these artists, not me. Sorry, cut that out. I'm not a graffiti artist. They like get mad where they're like, you need to get a hobby or something, and I'm defending my friends. Like, no. Like, it is more than a hobby. I mean, the stick figures guy, his actual pieces that you can take home go for thousands of dollars. That's not for nothing, right?
Yeah, and there's also definitely a method to it. Like, anyone thinks, oh, I can just draw a stick figure, but if you really look at what he draws, there's actually a method to it, and like they're very consistent in the little nuances of how they draw them.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen, but he has a drone pilot that films for him, and that guy must be having a heart attack every time stick figures on a bridge somewhere.
Yeah,
it's crazy. But anyways, how do you define art? Do you have a definition for yourself of what art is?
I think, as my professors would say, it's anything that would make you feel something, good or bad, or just in general. Like, I think if you're getting people to talk about it, it's definitely doing something, despite if it's just people saying like, oh, my kid could do that. In reality, your kid probably couldn't do that.
I like it. So if somebody wants to buy one of your art pieces, do you have a store or website for Lucky Ducky?
Yeah. So my business's name is Lucky Ducky Company. I have a website, luckyduckycompany.com. I also have an Instagram that I can be reached through, Lucky Ducky Company on Instagram. My main Instagram is also linked on it, where I usually post most of my art stuff. It's m_const, CONST. Yeah, and right now I don't have anything really posted, but I'm always open to commissions, and once the new semester starts in the fall, I should have some pieces available.
Sweet. Just to finish up, last question. You seem to be very educated, at least as far as like going to college, different classes. You had mentioned that you had the other degree or the minor or whatever in whatchamacallit. So you've definitely spent some time in college or in schooling. For somebody that may be an artist in high school or is building a portfolio, is there any advice that you can give? Because a lot of times when we interview people, they're actually like against college. I'm just being honest about it. So you seem to have gotten a lot out of it. You've got a lot of good reasons. Is there anything you would say to those people?
I would say it's a very great place to meet like-minded people and people who would actually help you further your art, not just say, oh, that's cool, or oh, I like this, but be like, I like that you did this specific thing, or maybe you should try this. I think that would really make it more powerful, or have you thought about it this way? And then other than that, just making connections in general with people. I've met so many wonderful, talented people that I see myself working with in the future. And I'm excited to see what they also make, because everyone, especially at Buff State, is very talented.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like Buff State is one of those places where, like, when I moved to Buffalo, post-military, it was just like a random stop, and I fell in love with the city. Buff State was just kind of, it was like the nicer in-between college, and now, like, I've done some work recently with like some of my film company over there. Just blown away with the things they're doing. I think it just became like a university or something, right?
Yeah, they just got the university name.
See, shout out to Buff State.
And I feel like also going to college for art in general, like, it's just been very validating, because sometimes when it's just you in your room, you can get very in your head and you're just like, oh, it's not that great. I see this all the time. It's, but going to college, people are like, no, that's really cool. Like, I like what you're doing. Like, keep going. That's very encouraging.
Plus, you probably get connections of where you can like sell or do things that you maybe not even have known about, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of places that offer like a college alley, so that you get a very cheap to free fee to vend at these events, and then you get some exposure from that. And then not only that, if you're going to college, especially for like a major like mine, it's very equipment intensive, and the equipment is so expensive. So it's nice to be able to like take full advantage of their facilities that I wouldn't normally be able to do just on my own.
Yeah, that was like my number one question when I was preparing to interview you was that I thought about was just, I have a big art background and just stopped using it when I went in the military. That's, I think, why I have this studio and film now, is because it's like finding that art I used to do. But I just wondered so much about the pottery and the ceramics with the kiln, because I was like, man, it's got to be in one place. There's no way you own one, right? Because it got to be $1 million.
Yeah,
I don't know. Do they have like portable ones or like mini ones at home?
There are mini ones, but they're still pretty expensive. So you might as well just save up to get a larger one. And yeah, they like to fire something in a typical size kiln. It takes 3 days because it needs to cool down for the same amount of time it heats up. And then there's things called holds where it'll stay at a certain temperature for a certain amount of hours you set, just so that it can finish drying out the clay, so it's safe to finish off firing.
I gotcha. Well, thank you so much for coming in. We have a talk show that's usually here. They ask everybody that comes through the door, so we're going to ask you for a bonus question. Drums or flats? Chicken wings?
Oh, drums.
Drums?
Drums. Okay.
All right, it's fair. I'm a drum person. Usually it's like a funny trick question where we're like, you know what they say about people that eat flats or whatever, you know what I mean? But I've been asking everybody. All right, well, thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.